Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host. Talking Kootenay Books has the opportunity of talking to various writers, authors within the Kootenays. And today my guest is Linda Buch. Linda, it's great to have you on the show. I understand you're from Fairmont and you've written a children's book, so congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's explore your book. It's called A Tale to Tell. I've known a lot of people that have told stories to their grandchildren, but I don't know too many that have actually taken it and turned it into a book. So can you tell me how that process worked?
When the COVID hit and we were all locked down and I could no longer spend the time with my grandchildren reading to them and doing artwork and that sort of thing that we did together, I got very lonesome for them. Mm-hmm. And so we started of course we were on the phone and on the FaceTime and those sorts of things, but it's just not the same. Mm-hmm. And since reading to them was always something that I did, I figured that if I wrote some stories for them, stories they had never heard before, mm-hmm. then that would be a new connection for us.
Mm-hmm. And what was their reaction? What did they think of that idea?
Well, as children love anything new.
Right.
So, yes, they reacted very well. And it was a learning process for me too, because sometimes I thought I had all the elements very clearly explained, but mm-hmm. they'd say, well, where did he get that? Or how did they do that? Okay. And so that became a refining process right. too. And I slowed down from maybe a story a day to a story a week.
Okay. So then you compiled all the stories, put them together in the book, and I'm just wondering, how did your grandchild react when you presented them with the book of the stories?
They were very pleased. But it was a family process right from the beginning, because my granddaughter, my 16-year-old granddaughter, did the illustrations. Okay. And it was my 9-year-old grandson that came up with the name. Okay. And my daughter and her partner are graphic designers, and they did they did that work for me. Mm-hmm. So the family was very much involved the whole way along and very encouraging.
Okay, so sounds like a good family project.
Oh, it turned out to be, and I think during COVID we all needed something new to focus on.
Right. So can you just give me a brief description of what the book's all about, maybe highlight a story or two?
There are 15 stories in the book, and I always felt, I'm a maritimer, and storytelling is in our DNA. Mm-hmm. It's a very deeply rooted Celtic thing. We had officials, bards, that told stories. Mm-hmm. So that's how high storytelling is held within that community. So when I started the book, I thought it's almost, and music are the twins, mm-hmm. music and storytelling. And a really good song tells a whole story in one chorus, 3 verses. And so I wanted the stories to really be concise, mm-hmm. because they're for children, and you really can't hold their attention forever if you're wandering here, there, and everywhere. Mm-hmm. So the first line of the first story says, where did we come from, and why do we tell stories? Mm-hmm. And the next 15 stories work on answering those questions.
So by the time you get to the end of the 15 stories, you've solved life's big question?
Well, I start out with a creation story. so in the beginning, yeah.
Oh, good. So let's just talk about the illustrations for a moment. You mentioned those. Yes. It was your granddaughter that did those?
Yes, yes.
So how did she come up with the illustrations, and did she work along with you and collaborate?
Yes. There is a lot of artists in the family, writers and artwork, and I do all sorts of handwork, knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, all those sorts of things. So, and music, all of those things together. So this granddaughter is here in Cranbrook, and she has been taking art courses, and she is into music. She does recording and that sort of thing. So I went to her and asked her if she had any interest in helping me with that part of it. Mm-hmm. And she read a few of the stories and took it on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So let's just talk about the actual process of getting the book ready to print and so forth. How long did that take you, and what was involved?
I had written the stories, and my friends in Fairmont knew that I had been doing this, calling the grandchildren at night and reading them stories that I had written. And so they started asking to read them. And I had a boredom too, I guess, with COVID going on. And after several of them had read them, they started passing them around, and they encouraged me to put them together in a book. They said, if you put them together in a book, I'll take one for my grandchildren and this and that. And I kind of thought, well, I don't know if I'm at that point yet. And I didn't know anything about publishing. So one friend said, give them to me, I'll type them up. You have to do this. And that was is really how the ball got rolling. And then other friends encouraged me too and said they wanted the book, and we went from there.
Good for you. So it's really nice to see. I've encountered many people over the years that say, oh, I'm going to write a book, but it just never happens. So congratulations for taking the initiative and actually making it happen. Of the 15 stories, any stand out as maybe your personal favorite? Or
you know what's been really nice? That everybody seems to have picked a story that they really like, and they're all different.
Right.
So it tells me that different things appeal to different people.
Right.
But for me, I really think I like stories where the kids have agency, where they make the decisions, they look after their own problems, they're not totally reliant on the adults in their lives, because for a lot of kids, the adults in their lives are not going to solve their problems for them. So kids that have that kind of moxie, I really like.
Right.
One of my favorite books was Secret Garden. And in that, the little girl is on her own, and she has to really solve her own problems.
And she uses her imagination.
She uses her imagination. Alice in Wonderland was another one.
Yeah.
All the adults were all over the place, where she was the sensible one that worked through things for herself. She had no one else to rely on.
Right.
And I think kids are often much more resilient and much more capable than we give them credit for.
Yeah, so it's really a nice thing to see that you've compiled these stories, put them together, made them into a really nice, easy to read package. And have you been out marketing the book, or how have you been distributing it?
It's been strictly word of mouth.
Okay.
I actually have had some medical issues over the last year, 2 major surgeries. So I was going into surgery when it was going to print.
Okay.
So that kind of, that part of it just totally, I did nothing about.
Right.
But people told people, and
Yeah.
and it's just been,
Well, that's a nice way to do it.
Yeah.
And I just want to go back and just talk about storytelling for a minute. Why is it so important, do you think, that we tell stories?
I think that if you take something like the very first story is how the world began. And if we look at science, there was a big bang and everything flew off, and here we are. But if you tell that as a story, you know that there was this giant who, through a series of incidents, accidentally created the world, and why there's a Milky Way, and why there's the Saturn has rings and all these sorts of things. It's much more interesting than there was a big bang.
Right. So it allows you to really sort of teach and convey a story at the same time, right?
Yes, and keep people's attention.
So Linda, this is your first book, A Tale to Tell. What's the future hold?
I had written 21 stories.
Okay.
And because I had that surgery coming up, it seemed like we had to hold it somewhere. So the first 15 were more or less what had been my favorites, I guess, and the favorites of the children. And so they became the first book, so there are leftovers. But it has made me want to write more. You were saying earlier that people often say, I have a book in my head, and I am always writing stories. When I go somewhere, I can be sitting on a bus or in a department store, and I see somebody go by, and I think, I'll bet that woman has, a very interesting story behind her, or, you know, just from the way that fellow walks, he looks like he's had a hard time. And so this whole story will be going around in my head from that. So I think it's maybe I'm at the point in my life where I have enough time to do those things, because I think it is often a matter of time, having the time.
Well, it sounds to me like you need about a dozen more stories and you've got another book.
Yeah, probably.
So what's been the reaction? How are people reacting to your book?
I think, well, one of the reactions was that somebody took it down to Victoria, and I've been in contact with Lorinda there, who does curating of items, and it's going to be included in the COVID, the things that were created during COVID.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's a nice tribute,
yeah,
for sure.
that's nice.
Well, congratulations on the book, and we look forward to your next project as well. It's wonderful to really have someone tell stories and really focus in on children, because I think you know, our children are so busy with digital and everything that they do. Actually having something printed and have them you know, sort of absorb the stories that way is a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my guest today, Linda Buch, and she has written a book called A Tale to Tell. And this has been Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell.